We want to have these conversations. It's not something that they are imposing on us by coming to our office with concerns or with questions. That's actually the whole purpose of why we're here, and we welcome those conversations and want to have them.
Ripple Effects is brought to you by the National Clearinghouse on Disability and Exchange. The National Clearinghouse on Disability and Exchange is a project of the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, designed to increase the participation of people with disabilities in international exchange between the United States and other countries, and supported in its implementation by Mobility International USA. I'm Justin Harford, a project coordinator with Mobility International USA and your host for Ripple Effects. We went to the Association on Higher Education and Disability, AHEAD, conference in July 2017. And that's where I met Chuck Eade from the Disability Service Program, DSP, at Denver University. He told me that Denise Cope and Stephanie Roberts of the Study Abroad office at DU had reached out to his office about the possibility of working to increase the participation of students with disabilities in exchange programs. Since then, we have had quite a lot of interaction with Chuck, Stephanie, and Denise to plan a workshop for exchange professionals in Colorado to learn about how to be more effective at including people with disabilities in overseas programs. This is not the first time that we've received this kind of request. Universities across the country are looking for ways to include students from diverse backgrounds, including first-generation students, LGBTQ students, students from ethnic minority backgrounds, students with disabilities, and more. We caught up with Stephanie and Chuck to talk about what this has looked like at DU, whether or not you think study abroad is the right thing for you. I hope you'll take away the fact that, like Denver University, your school very likely has similar opportunities, and that you would bring a valuable contribution to their programs if you were to consider applying. So let's get started with the interview. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today we are joined by Stephanie Roberts and Chuck Eade from Denver University. And guys, we actually first heard about you. I heard about you first when I was meeting Chuck at a conference last year, and he mentioned that the director of his study abroad program, I believe that might be you, Stephanie, was interested in trying to get more disabled people to study abroad. And then you guys have reached out to us since then. So how did that all kind of start? Maybe tell us the story about how that all started on your side, this kind of initiative to get more disabled people involved in studying overseas.
Yeah, well, the director in our office is Denise Cope, so I definitely can't take credit for her role in this. But for all of us here in our office, we take inclusive excellence really seriously. Inclusive excellence is a term that DU uses pretty broadly as part of DU's overall vision. And each of our offices here at DU are really challenged to interpret what does that mean for our unit and how are we actually putting work into and making effort to make sure that we are really being as inclusive as we can be. At DU, we're very lucky. We have a very strong study abroad program. We send about 69% of our student body abroad, which is very high in comparison to a lot of other institutions. Yeah. So in that sense, we're very lucky and we're very proud of our program. But we do still have gaps. And among those gaps is really making sure that we are being as intentional as we can be in making sure that all students can see themselves being able to study abroad. Whether they choose to pursue that route or not is obviously a personal decision, but we want students to really be able to envision this as an option for them. And that has always been clear for us. It's been something we've been working towards, and our relationship with MIUSA really came to be more intentional, I think, in the last couple years. We've always had your resources on our website. We've always had your resources as something that we can direct students to. We've always had a very good relationship with our Disability Services Program office here at DU, but we realized that we could be doing it a lot more intentionally and a lot more proactively to help students see that we're here as a support structure and not something that is just going to be reactive, but really thinking through a lot of this proactively. So we reached out to you guys, I think, on our end about a year and a half ago now, and Chuck, brought his experience with having worked with you before and knowing you, Justin, really got us very excited about where this could go.
Yeah, for my quick story, I started here at the University of Denver in April and had an opportunity to meet Stephanie and Denise at an introductory meeting. And one of the things that came up was how can we build on the students with disabilities to study abroad. And I had a meeting with Denise, and I was able to share that I worked in the housing and residential life area for about 7 years, and most of those years I've worked primarily with international students on that side, doing different programmatic efforts and encouraging international students to come to our institution. And so on the flip side of that, we're really wanting to learn more about the study abroad side to get our students to build their cultural awareness by studying abroad for a quarter. And after the meeting with Denise, thankfully I was able to meet you, Justin, at the AHEAD conference, and being able to talk a lot more about what you envision and being able to talk to other institutions to be a catalyst for me to get more excited about what we can do here at DU. And then those relationships have just grown. You and I have maintained contact, and then we thankfully been able to meet more people at MyUSA where we met at the regional conference for NAFSA when you guys were here in Denver.
Yeah,
we had a great evening together, talking about things and talking about potentials for building our program collaboratively. And this is where we are now. And Monica, who with MyUSA has worked closely with Denise, and thankfully you guys are going to be coming out to an internationalization summit in April, which we're very excited to continue building that awareness, not only for DU, but all the constituents that'll be visiting during this summit to build awareness for all institutions in the Denver area.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that I don't know how many people really quite are noticing this, that are realizing this, that universities like yours around the country are making these efforts, are so energetic about making sure that the people that we're sending overseas are as diverse as we are as a country, that you guys are organizing trainings like with organizations like ours to kind of provide support to both staff in the disability office and staff in the study abroad office on how this works in reality, how to make reasonable accommodations, how to work with sending students with disabilities overseas.
Yeah, and for us, Justin, a big piece of our push for that is really the logistics of it. I think, our mission is really that students understand what their resources are, who they can go to for what, depending on the program that they're choosing, but also where the differences might lie in what they're used to versus what to expect abroad. So for example, the fact that the ADA does not follow students 100% abroad, and talking to students about, okay, what does that actually mean when it comes to the ADA is a US law, it does not have jurisdiction in another country, but what does that country offer? What does that institution in that country that I'm planning to go to offer that can be comparable? And that takes planning. That's true for any student. Study abroad is a planning process. It's not just, pick something and go. We tell students across the board, there are lots of questions you should be asking yourself about what you're looking for. And for students with disabilities, that is one among many of the questions that they have, just like any other student. But the more we know on the logistical side how to support them and what to prepare them for and what questions to help them ask the institution considering, the more they're informed and can make educated decisions for themselves about what that reality might look like when they get there.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, and for our listeners too, as I point out, the logistical part of it, we cover a lot about that at www.myusa.org. And Stephanie, you guys, I was taking a look at the resources on your website, and it was actually really impressive. What you have kind of explaining to people what they should be considering as they're planning. And I totally second your comment about that. I spent a year planning my study abroad in Chile. It really does involve a lot of planning. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, it totally does. Go ahead, sorry. No, yeah. And I think the other thing too is, we have listeners, they have disabilities, and we're a disability organization, but then, that's not the only thing too that some of our listeners or some of the people that we've worked with are experiencing too. And so, people that come with all kinds of identities, and I've seen too on your website, you guys, it isn't just about disability. You guys have resources. If I'm a person of color, if I'm a person from an LGBTQIA background, there's all kinds of information that you can read about as you're planning to prepare overseas, and how kind of your identities will interact with those experiences. Maybe, so, I mean, what do your kind of initiatives kind of more broadly look like in terms of at your school of promoting diversity in your programs?
Yeah, so really it's an ambitious scope for us, but something that we feel very passionate about. To us, diversity is a very broad discussion, right? Just like you said, we all have complex identities. We all have interconnected identities. Depending on where in the world you're wanting to go, one identity might be more influential in that than another, and helping students work through that. We have a department on campus called Campus Life and Inclusive Excellence. It's kind of been the merger of a couple different departments on campus. Among those was the Center for Multicultural Excellence, which now falls under that larger department. And that office has been another strong partner for us in terms of making sure that we're meeting students where they are, but also where they have relationships of trust already. So with DSP, with the Center for Multicultural Excellence, with international student clubs, identity coalitions on campus. These are places where students have already sought out relationships and support structures that they trust and that they feel heard in, and we don't necessarily need to recreate that. What we can do is be part of where they're already finding those relationships and be invited to those spaces by our partners that already are in those spaces, and have great conversations with students around what the barriers they see to their ability to go abroad might be, what within that might be, fears or myths that they're unsure of, what among that might be serious considerations for them to look at, but knowing that there are resources to help them move through those questions, just as with any other student. Like you said, we've got resources for if you identify as a woman going abroad, if you identify within the LGBT community, if you identify as somebody from lower economic, income levels where you're not sure that financially this can work out for you, all of those are things that students need to ask themselves, and have us as a resource to help guide them through the resources that they have and help them get answers to questions that they've got. So one of the things that we're really passionate about is just solidifying those relationships across campus and having a more intentional effort around reaching students where they are, talking to them where they already have relationships of trust, and just making sure they feel that our doors are open and we want to have these conversations. It's not something that they are imposing on us by coming to our office with concerns or with questions. That's actually the whole purpose of why we're here, and we welcome those conversations and want to have them.
That is such a great point. I mean, it's actually that last comment that you made kind of resonates with me, because, I think sometimes as people with disabilities, I think we kind of can be more conditioned to just kind of try to deal with it ourselves. Like, you kind of get the sense that you are kind of maybe creating a lot of extra trouble for a program if you ask for an ASL interpreter, or if you ask for stuff in Braille. And it sounds like kind of what you're saying is, I mean, people should ask at least, and that there can be that conversation, and that you guys do have sources. In many cases, the answer could be a yes, even if it was expected to be a no.
Absolutely. And with that, and again, this is a message I have for all students, is the need for flexibility, right? Because it may not be your dream scenario. It may not be your dream answer to the question you're posing, but what is a realistic answer? And how do I go about getting that information? How do I advocate for myself if I feel that my needs aren't being met, but how can I use the resources from the Study Abroad office to help me do that? So flexibility is key, and understanding again that realities on the ground are going to look different in all different parts of the world. They're not going to be identical, and knowing where your boundary is of what am I willing to be flexible on, and what can I just not be? What is a hard need for me that if that's not available, then this destination might not be the right fit. And those are honest conversations to be having, and keeping that flexibility in mind.
Nice. Now, kind of wrapping up, I wonder, Chuck, I wonder if we've talked a lot about, I know Stephanie was mentioning about like building rapport kind of, and how through other offices on campus where students kind of already have that trust. And I wonder if you could maybe offer a reflection from the perspective of the DSP on what does this look like for you guys as you're kind of supporting maybe both the Study Abroad office and also students with disabilities that are looking into study abroad with DU? It could be really
I think
broad. I
that,
mean, anything really that comes to mind.
right. I think the main connection between DSP working with study abroad is, as you know, every student has a unique set of accommodations
Hmm.
that they're approved for, and sometimes those uniquenesses need to be adjusted when they choose a destination that might not approve it or might not be able to provide it. And so I think it's really important in our office if they were to come to us to ask questions on how they can assure access for their destination is to build that education and be sympathetic in working with them, but just knowing that, hey, these are going to be part of your real life scenarios that are going to happen if you get a job and this isn't there, but this is there. How are you going to work through that? And it brings that really unique experience for the student when they study abroad, that a new destination is just like a new job. And so we really try to focus on that. And some of the things that we've done to help alleviate some of the stress and the concerns is just having individuals from the International House or the Internationalization Department to come to our department and be able to sit there and be able to answer questions of students that are interested in studying abroad. And we're looking forward to building those collaborations and those meetings and workshops so students can be more excited about what they can do to study abroad rather than what are my limitations in doing from there. So just shifting it from limitations to opportunities and how can we tackle those opportunities in a proactive way rather than a reactive way.
Right. I mean, kind of what I'm getting from both you and Stephanie is, sometimes there are certain things that aren't so realistic to expect abroad as you get them on your home campus. But it's like you said, I mean, man, that totally resonates with me. When I came to a new job, it's totally new culture, totally different way of doing things, and totally different set of challenges to resolve. And going overseas is just such a great way to simulate that and to get you ready for those challenges in life. I wonder if you could just kind of, I feel like if I'm a student here, if I'm someone listening to this, I'm kind of going to wonder, like, okay, what exactly does this look like? And I was curious if maybe you might have an example of just a general example of maybe of somebody of an accommodation that looked different overseas, and kind of how that was, just a really quick comment on that.
Yeah, so a couple examples come to mind. So we had a student who went to Central America, and he did everything that he was supposed to do up front, right? We'd asked him provide information on your accommodations. He did have some accommodations within the classroom around extra time on exams, and some different accommodations around exam and assignment times. And while on paper, the accommodations looked very similar, right? He could still get about time and a half on an exam. There was a structure at the institution he went to make those requests, and he did that. One thing that he realized, and I think was a great learning experience for him, was the cultural differences around how accommodations are viewed and what is the nature of privacy. So one thing he struggled with, for example, was one professor, as the exam was getting ready to be given, said, oh, so-and-so, you get some extra time, so, you can go ahead and stay later than the other students, and announced that in the middle of class. We're used to that kind of information being considered private. If I disclose to my professor that this is the accommodation I've gotten arranged, I might have, from a U.S. perspective, an expectation that that's going to stay between me and my professor, and it's my choice to announce that or not if I choose to. Versus in Latin America, or at least within this context that he was in, that wasn't seen as private information. It wasn't seen as bad information, but there wasn't this idea of, oh, well, why can't I just say that to the class so they know that why you're getting some extra time, they should know what's going on. And that was just a very subtle difference, but one that I think he struggled with in terms of just feeling comfortable with that, but then being able to reflect on it and say, okay, I'm seeing from, and I'm noticing where my frustration is coming from as well. And that's a very small example, but can be a really jarring one if you're not ready for that. Other examples might be around, what are time limits in different countries. In the UK, you can only get time and a half. That's the maximum on an exam. Any more than that is not possible. Then you've got things all the way into other areas of life where if you have a physical disability, The campus itself might be pretty accessible around it. What about my housing? What about public transportation?
Yes.
So you can see where these conversations can get pretty big. And you're never going to have 100% of the answers. I think holding yourself to that of, oh God, I can't go until I know everything is not realistic either. But being able to give a sense of, okay, this is generally what I can expect. This is what I know to be prepared for. And if I'm struggling, who do I go to get some additional support or to help me understand what's happening? I think that's the best way to approach that kind of planning. At least that's how we approach it at our office, very step-by-step with students.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, it's just, I guess I use the term of intentional conversation and intentional information. So we need to be very honest in what they could be looking into. Like a good example would be emotional support animal. They might be approved for one here, and yes, it might work out at the destination of choice, but animal is the animal going to be quarantined for 4 weeks before they get to come home? Are there other paperwork? Are there other statutes? And those students those questions, and that's where the collaboration and the closeness of our departments comes in to where, hey, what do you think? What do you know? Do you have a contact at this destination that we can actually ask these questions to see what's going on with it? And then sometimes it'll get as big as, well, we need to contact the country government and just be able to determine if an ESA is even viable to go with the individual there. And so that's just another accommodation that can really pose some hardship and build some anxiety on the students as they move forward.
No, I mean, we've seen like cases where, countries will have, it'll be perfectly acceptable, say, to have a pet or an animal living with you. But then when it comes to importing animals, that's a whole different ballgame. Well, gosh, I really appreciate this time that you've had with us, guys. And one final question is, we're going to ask everybody this season, but just I just want you to share just a couple quick comments what diversity means to each of you as we close up here.
Diversity is something that for me, it's a concept that means so many different things. And I think it's a continual learning experience. You're never going to get one answer of what diversity means. And so for me, diversity it's like a melting pot, and it's a opportunity to build awareness and understanding of another identity, whether it's disability or any other type of identification that a person would have. And so building those conversations and being able to learn and build awareness so you can have your own perspective on that diversity option or that diversity, that particular piece of diversity, I'll say. And it's just such a fascinating term, but it's also such a daunting term too, because when you hear diversity and they say, what does it mean? It's like, oh my gosh, what does it mean? Because it can mean so many different things, and that's the beauty of it, because it has so many different perspectives and definitions to move forward.
It's really expanded a lot over the years, for sure. I think that's been one of the exciting things about how it's just expanded to include more and more people.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's honestly, when I think of diversity, it's that intentional embracing of how complex we are as people. And to me, that's very exciting. We're learning, every generation is learning more and more about how to connect with communities that might be different than you are, or, expand and find a community that you have some common ground with that you didn't realize you had. And so the opportunities to connect that embracing diversity allows us is really pretty exciting. I think it's also challenging. I think, we see that play out all over the world in every aspect of our lives, that, cultural clashes among different identities can and do happen. But I think if we approach those as opportunities to learn from one another and really try to better our own understanding of different aspects of identity, the more we grow. And we're all a complex bag of different identities. None of us is ever only one thing. But understanding how all of those things interconnect in ourselves and then in our role in the world. And when we go someplace new that might have different cultural values around different types of identity, all of that is a learning process. And I think it's a really exciting one, and one that has a lot of opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie Roberts and Chuck Eid from Denver University. We've really enjoyed this time with you, and we're really looking forward to publishing this all out. And thank you so much. This has been appreciated.
Thank you so much, Justin. We appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to a continuing collaboration.
And that concludes Ripple Effects, Travelers with Disabilities Abroad. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends. If you really feel positively about us, we would appreciate it if you would leave us a review on iTunes. All of those things will help us get the word out to more people. See you next time.